Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, April 9th, 2026. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, author Peter Symons is back to talk about his experience in using AI to deconstruct historic Partygyle recipes, untangling the complicated process of blending multiple worts, in the end, resulting in a simple homebrew recipe to replicate one of Peter's past favorite beers. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Financial supporters have already seen the video I'm planning to post on Friday to the general public. This one is about a mixed drink, a Canadian Caesar, but I've decided to put an Asian twist on the Clamato-based recipe. Steve has a taste and tells us what he thinks. Let's jump into the mailbag for a fun note from Chris in Wilson, North Carolina. Chris says, last week my wife and I were driving from our home in North Carolina to Galena, Illinois. We were on the last leg of the trip between Bloomington, Illinois, and Galena, and we were listening to your podcast from March 12th, 2026. Tari Baked Mash Beer with Mika Leitinen and Adam Ross. Shortly after the podcast was done, my wife mentioned that she wanted to stop for a bite to eat. Lo and behold, the next exit happened to be Bettendorf, Iowa. There was no question. We had to stop at Twin Span Brewing and get lunch and a pint and perhaps say hi to Adam. I am happy to state that lunch was fantastic, and the oyster stout we ordered to go with it was delicious, as were the cans of 5th Anniversary Barley Wine Imperial Stout Blend, aged in bourbon barrels, that we enjoyed at our hotel later in the week. Chris, unfortunately, says that he didn't get to meet Adam, but he finally knows where Bettendorf, Iowa, and the Quad Cities area is. So how cool is that? I shared Chris's note with Adam, and he was sad to have missed that visit with Chris and his wife, but asked Chris to let him know when they were going to be in town again, and he would make a point to meet up. Very cool. As a footnote, Chris said he ordered and received a new Basic Brewing Brewer's Logbook. So big thanks to Chris for the fun note, and thanks for picking up a book. You, too, can get your hands on a copy of the freshly reprinted Brewer's Logbook now at basicbrewingshop.com. Each book has a handy blank calendar in the front where you can track your brews and room to log 50 batches of beer in the back. It's great for keeping beside your kettle to keep track of details, even if you use an application to formulate your recipes, because I do too. I use the app. But with a printed logbook, there's no yearly subscription. So your recipes won't disappear into the cloud if you don't pay up year after year, See what I'm saying? Find those at basicbrewingshop.com. From one shameless plug into another, our friends at Imperial Yeast are re-releasing L55 Kanpai, the most requested seasonal from 2025. Clean, crisp, and smooth, Imperial L55 Kanpai gives you crystal clear results because of its high flocculation. Light, drinkable body with a real depth of flavor and a crisp, dry finish. L55 Kanpai is also versatile, well-suited for classic rice lagers and modern twists alike. You might remember that I brewed a rice lager and added yuzu and ginger flavor into that beer. That was a fun beer, but I want to brew it again and leave out the fruit flavors this time to let the base beer shine through. Something simple and delicious for summertime coming up. We love Imperial Yeast with 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package. I like to say my stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches, and my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. Imperial L55 Kanpai is available through June 5th, so ask your local homebrew store for it. And as always, you can check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. It's imperialyeast.com. Okay, Peter Symons is a beer historian and home brewer, author of Archived Brews, 6 O'Clock Brews, True Blue Beers, Bronzed Brews, and Guile Brews. Lately, in addition to combing through brewery archives in person and online, he's been putting artificial intelligence to good use. This time, he used it to untangle a recipe for a favorite beer from a very complicated Partygyle process. Peter Symons, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Good to be back, James. How are you?
I'm good. It's windy up here in northwest Arkansas today. There's a fire danger. And by the time I actually get around to posting this, it could be a different weather situation. But how are things down there?
It's been a typical February, so it's been a mixture of thunderstorms, humidity, straight out heat, and rain.
Well, there you go. We
choose your own weather at random.
yeah. The old cliche is around here: if you don't like the weather, just wait around a few minutes and you'll get something else.
Right. That normally applies to Melbourne in this country rather than Sydney, but I think Sydney might be catching up this year.
Well, this has to be a record for the quickest you've come back on the show. In our relationship of getting together every now and then. But you approached me with this video that you've produced for your channel Tritun Books. That's Tritun Books on YouTube about Partygyle brewing, and you have a book called Guile Brews that concentrates on Partygyle brewing, and I learned a lot from that. I thought I knew how to Partygyle until I read your book, and then I was like, oh, I guess historically I'm doing it wrong. So maybe we should catch up and go back a bit and explain what is Partygyle brewing and why would somebody want to do it?
Well, we do need to timestamp Partygyle. Well, first up, what is a Partygyle? Just for a definition, it's a batch of beer that you make multiple guiles, i.e., brews or beers, from one single mash. That's the traditional sort of definition, and it's varied over time. It's quite complicated. You've got to be able to work out the total grist of all the beers that you're going to brew from this particular one mash, and how you're going to allocate them into the different beers. So there's a degree of theory behind how you want to construct your multiple beers. And then most of the historical data that I've seen, what it gives you is the actual production log that shows what amount of wort went into each individual fermentation vessel and how that was blended to make the beer. There's the homebrew way of doing Partygyling, which is very al fresco. Have to be said, it's very al fresco, especially our colleagues of the North American persuasion.
Willy-nilly, you might say.
Yeah, well, you max out your mash tun with whatever you can get in there. You drain it out, and that's your first runnings. And then you put some more stuff on the top, and you do second runnings. You might mix them up, you might not.
Probably not.
Yeah, it's homebrew. It's fine. Whichever way you do it, you need a lot of equipment. You really do need two. I'll call them kettles, but copper equals kettle because most coppers were actually made of copper in the olden days, even though they're mostly stainless steel. So whatever. Kettle. You really need to boil twice, and then you've got to deal with the blending. and I think from our previous chat some while ago about Partygyle brewing, that the technicalities of trying to do that when perhaps you've got an all-in-one single vessel is a bit tricky. The giling process itself can be seen as quite complicated because you've got to deal with these wort streams and you've got to blend them all up. The industrial brewers, particularly of the UK, England in particular, brewers like Eldridge Pope in Dorchester, they could make up to 6 or 7 different beers out of one Partygyle mash. But it wasn't actually one mash, it was several mashes, because they had several mash tuns, several coppers, and plenty of fermentation vessels. So they made really weird permutations. I've not tried to recreate any of those because, quite honestly, it's just too hard.
What you need is a big homebrew club meeting and brew session with people with lots of different setups.
Yeah, if you were organized to do that, or at least a pair of brewers with 2 single vessel systems, yes, you could Partygyle and you could do your blending. But again, there's maths involved. You need to work out the blends. I created a blending spreadsheet a while back so that I could adjust the quantity of wort against the measured gravity and then work out the mix to get the required OG into the fermenter. So that whole way of doing brewing, the alfresco, free and easy, that's lovely.
And let me define, I guess, what my preconception was before I had read your book and had the conversation with you about it. It was you do the first runnings, you make that into a big beer. And then you do the second running, you fill up the mash tun again, you do another mash, you take the second runnings, you separate that off, and you make another beer, a small beer. And you might add some adjuncts, to the second beer to make it a little bigger or whatever. Well, in most, if not all, the examples, if I recall from your book, it was you take runnings A and runnings B and then blend a certain percentage of runnings A with a certain percentage of runnings B to make the bigger beer or to make a beer. And then you use a different proportion to make a second beer. So you're actually blending those 2 runnings back together in different proportions to get beers of different strength. Is that correct?
Yes and no.
Partial credit.
Because, I mean, the typical and probably the last remaining Partygyle brewer is Fuller's of Chiswick in London, making their London Pride and ESB and Golden Pride. And they used to make Chiswick. I don't think they do that anymore. So they're beers of different strengths and different characters and different fermentation and different dry hopping regimes. They've got 2 mash tuns, and their Partygyle process is pretty much the way London brewers seem to have behaved. Their way of, I'll just use your A and B. So copper A, the high gravity wort, it goes into every beer in varying proportions. So if you were making the Golden Pride, which is the barley wine, it would have a lot higher proportion of copper A with the higher gravity, but still have the lower gravity worts from the other coppers. Your London Pride at a 1048-ish might be 50-50, and then there's a bit of adjustment with either liquor, which is treated brewing water, or hop sparge when they used whole hops with a hop back. They would occasionally, and this is British brewers generally, might rinse the hops, the whole leaf hops, and get a few points of gravity rather than just using liquor. And you see that sometimes in the books. It's just written as HS, hop sparge.
And when we say liquor, it's water, essentially.
Treated water, brewing water, not water as in ordinary water, but treated brewing water. It's the name that's used in the textbooks, liquor.
Over here,
not liquor as in liquor.
Yeah,
no,
over here, yeah. If you
you
say liquor here, it's it's a little stronger than water. Generally,
well, it may have other connotations as well, but I don't think we'll go there.
It's a family show.
Yeah, absolutely. So that the blending arrangements are quite crucial, and in fact, it's where all the magic happens. How you choose to blend what you've produced in the various coppers is going to directly affect the quality and the type of beer you're going to produce. You've still got the option of doing some permutations of different yeasts, different fermentation profiles, different dry hopping. So you've got a whole range of things that you can do downstream. But you have to... you've got to do I think to do it properly, you've got to do a decent batch size, and most people, I suspect, in the modern era, where people are brewing less and don't want a lot of permutations of what could be a very similar beer, a beer that might be just a different strength between, say, an ordinary bitter, a special bitter, and an ESB. They might be only so many gravity points difference between them, but they're the same basic beer, in terms of proportions. Well, unless you've got a special occasion, I don't really know what you're particularly going to gain by that.
Mm-hmm.
Where I said yes and no, there were some instances I found in the historical text where they would make a stronger beer, say 1065 strong ale, and they might use all of copper 1 and a bit of liquor just to get the right gravity, and then the remainder of copper 1 would go into things like mild or brown ales or pale ales. Could go into anything really. So it's a permutation, if you like, on high gravity brewing. But these industrial brewers of London in particular, and they were really keen on efficiency. So the thing that a Partygyle gives to an industrial brewery is efficiency, because they take the runnings right down to 1004, or you really, they're not worried about the astringency issues, I don't think, because it's all going to get blended into the fermenter and it will disappear amongst everything else.
Yeah, that's what we've been told. In back in the day of sparging, is you didn't want to sparge past below a certain gravity level because you get harsh astringencies from the grain. But I guess if you're blending everything together, it all comes out in the wash, so to speak.
Indeed. So, my motivation for the video that I did and put it on YouTube was to try and work out if you could get. There are some logs where it just shows a single beer. It might be multiple fermentation vessels, but it was a single beer. And was that single beer the same as when they partygyled with something else? That really was my investigation. And I chose youngs. There's a couple of reasons for that. When I was a lot younger, I played rugby for Mill Hill in North London. And we would, this is in 1975, we would play away fixtures south of the river. And Young's Brewery, as it was located in Wandsworth in South London, and we would typically have a couple of beers after the match, and we'd drink Young's beers, which were very different to the ones that were available to us in the north of London. So I have very fond memories of drinking Young's Bitter and Young's Special. Not that I can recall the exact details after all this time has passed. Well, I probably couldn't the day after either, but never mind. So there's some nostalgia there with Young's.
Sure.
And just ratchet that through a few years. I went to London for a conference in 2006, and I flew from Sydney, and I landed at Heathrow at 6 o'clock in the morning. Went and dropped my bags in the hotel, and I had pre-booked the brewery tour at Young's. So about lunchtime, went to Young's on the tube, walked down to there, and met I think it was about 6 Swedish homebrewers, one guy from the States, and there was me, and we went on the tour. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, Young's ceased to exist shortly thereafter. I don't think it was due to me being on tour. They sold the place for development. But I did have a very wonderful afternoon drinking Young's beers, oatmeal stout and all those good things. And I have to say I had no jet lag whatsoever when I woke up the following day.
Oh, there you go.
So there's a tip for travellers. Book your brewery tour. Make sure you get enough anaesthetic in during the afternoon.
So the hangover superseded the the jet lag.
Oh, it's no hangover. No hangover. No. Moderation.
Of course.
I was very pleased to find that the brewery records of Young's had been preserved, and I knew they'd been preserved because I contacted John Hatch, who was a brewer at Wandsworth, and I was aware that they'd been preserved, but they weren't yet publicly accessible. This was 5-6 years ago, and now they are available in the library in Battersea. And Ron Pattinson had taken a trip over from Amsterdam and taken some photos. So I tapped him up, and I got some brewery logs from 1975 that showed me single guile Young's Bitter, Young's Special, Ramrod, and Partigyling of those beers. So I had the data to be able to do the analysis. So off I went. Took me about a month, and I used the AI.
Bum, bum, bum.
I used Gemini. I was using ChatGPT, but I think it's gone off a bit. It does. Both of them have the propensity to. I think they want to be helpful, and then they tell you fibs.
Yeah, we want to,
or just straight lies.
Yeah, hallucinations, as they say. We talked about this the last time we got together was, beware. They can be useful if you use them properly, but beware. Check your work or check their work when you're dealing with them.
Yes, indeed. So I use Gemini in its pro iteration, and it's very different if you use the fast one. If you use the fast one, it's a lick and a spit, and quality's not good. However, so where I was at was I wanted to be able to analyze the log, and I wanted, instead of me having to go through all of my process of doing it manually through the spreadsheets, I wanted just to plug the data in of the materials used, the batch size, the blending volumes, and just have it spit out a 24-litre batch. I chose 24 litres. It's a bit of a compromise between US 6 gallons, UK 5 gallons, and a reasonable sort of batch size. So I just chose 24.
So it's disentangling the brewing of one beer from the Partygyle process. So in other words, to restate what you said, just so I can get my mind around it, you were taking the data from how they went through the Partygyle process of multiple mashes and blending the mashes and the ratios and things like that to get a certain beer of certain characteristics. You just want to do a homebrew version of that beer using just a single recipe. Is that right?
Yes. So I wanted to extract the I wanted to extract Young's Ordinary Bitter from the Partygyle. The process to do that was, as I described, what I was doing was replicating through the AI definition of what I wanted done. What I got the bot to do, I got the bot to define what it needed for me to be able to get what I wanted, which was to define this one beer, which was Young's Bitter. So the bot gave me a text that it would need to be able to generate a Python program. And I know people's eyes will glaze over. Mine used to, but just consider that it's going to produce a program that gives you an output as text files and things. You don't actually have to know the mechanics of the program. And in fact, I wouldn't, other than, it starts and stops as a program and you run it. I was more interested in the outcomes that it gave me to make sure that I could replicate my manual process, which I did to validate what the bot was producing through this Python program.
Now, let me ask a probably clueless devil's advocate question. Now these are the guiles, the different runs are coming from the same mash tun with the same ingredients, right? So it's not, they're not adding ingredients between the runs and the mash tun. So why could you not take the ratios of the ingredients of the mash tun and, like using brewing software, just come up with a grist or a mash tun full of grains that results in the target original gravity that you wanted?
That was part of the investigation, because on the face of it, that might be what you would get. So if I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Because that's a good point.
I'll write that down.
So,
good point me.
So, good point. Yeah. Look, you can put that. I'll send you a certificate. All right. So, what I did, I'll come back to the analysis after I just finished with how I got the thing to do what I wanted it to do.
Okay.
So, iterative process over a few weeks. It was able to produce almost exactly what I could do by putting it into Brewfather software and my blending matrix, etc. Although the bittering was different and I had to resolve why the bittering was different, which brings us back to your point in that what's in the mash tun isn't the full story. Because there were copper additions like number 3 invert sugar and caramel. Each copper then was hopped differently. So there were 3 coppers, 3 different hopping regimes, and they used hops at boil and hops in the hopback, which is quite an interesting technique for 1975, I guess. So that's sort of like a hop stand. So I had to resolve in my own mind how the IBU calculation, which is a rubbery sort of thing at the best of times, but I needed something to be able to compare. So I went and looked at what's the current thinking of what bitterness you get from a hop stand, what utilization do you get? You get different utilizations at different temperatures and also gravities. So I iterated with the bot until I got something that I felt was, if I was doing it myself, would come out about right in terms of the hopping regime. So we've got the situation where taking the materials percentages from the mash tun will take you so far, but they're not the full story, because even if it was an all malt beer without any sugar added, you've still got different bitterness levels coming from different hopping rates in different coppers, and you're then apportioning them to the different beers in different amounts. So your bitterness changes. So in a lot of instances, I think you could just take, if it was an all malt beer, you could probably just take the whole lot as an average and say that's the individual beer. A next level of definition, I think now would be that you would you'd run it through the very wonderful calculator, what I've defined and the bot's done the programming for, and it'll tell you, it'll give you a recipe. It'll give you a recipe that you can export as a beer XML file and put it into your software. So I've sort of come to the view that yes, in the instances of Young's, they were beers made pretty much the same way if they were single guile or Partygyle. So ordinary was damn near identical to a Partygyle to a single guile. All the numbers after it had been blended up all came out about right. Special was a little bit different. I've got a snapshot of a set of logs from April 1975. If I'd had the inclination and could be bothered, a broader spread of logs would have evened out the process variability. So if it's a bit under on bittering, they might have blended. You don't know. They might have added in return wort, which is the pasteurized slops from the pubs coming back or the ullage in the barrels, which would have affected the final beer. Funnily enough, I've never felt the need to include that in any of my recipes. Anyway, call it a quirk.
Yeah, pasteurized sludge. They need to work on the brand name for that. It's Wonder Muck. There. How about that?
Yeah, well, the Whitbread logs and the Watney's logs that I've seen, they specified no more than so many % could be put into their what was their mild ale. It mostly went into mild ale. Obviously, character building for a cheap pint.
It's the Solera process, really. It's just adding beer back in over and over and over again. So should we wait to talk about the results? Because you actually brewed the recipe. Should we wait to take because I want to talk about the process of if somebody wants to follow in your footsteps. what actually on the computer do they have to do to make this happen? Because you're making your software available, are you not?
I have, and this will also cause your eyes to roll. It's available on GitHub.
Is that legal?
There's a link. You just go to GitHub, and I've been very good. I've put the so if you look at the video, the source files for the analysis that I did in the video are all on GitHub, along with the program. So I've got a Windows 11 machine, so you've just got to install Python, and there's plenty of other helpful things to let you do that. So install Python, copy the bat file, which lets you run that's very Windows 3.1 actually, a bat file, but it gets around a few problems. It launches the Python program. The Python program asks you a few prompts. You fill in which files that you want, and it'll spit out the answer. The only tricky bit is if you're not using my example and you're using one of your own, you need to create what's called a JSON file, capital JSON. Now, again, this is intimidating for some people, but think of it, you put it in a text editor, Notepad. I use Notepad++. You need to get your data in so the bot's program the Partygyle analyzer can actually do its work. So you need to put in the weights of the grist in pounds. It's all working in imperial barrels of 36 gallons. That might be a trap for American audience. But it's all defined in there, and you put in your hopping rates, you put in the type of hops, when it was added, kettle additions. So it'll do everything to get you to a blend. It will then spit out a text file. The text file says, here are all the different beers that you can get from this Partygyle based on the blending analysis. So you have to have a log from the brewery that shows how they made each of the beers. If you haven't got that, you're basically stuffed. So there's no point in trying to do that one. But most of them, they wrote down, as they were going along through the brew day, they wrote down what they blended. Now, they had the advantage of, they'd probably been doing the same beer for 30 years. So they had a pretty fair idea of they probably only needed to tweak in the second and third coppers just to make sure they got their gravity spot on. And fair dues to them. Without computers and all those things that we now take for granted, AI producing programs, they did a remarkable job because they're very consistent outcomes. So in the top of this JSON file, you put your batch size in, you put in your efficiency of your brewing system, because the big system, very efficient. From the figures in the Young's logs, about 90% efficiency. Homebrew, say 70, 75, in those sort of ranges.
Because the pros are they're rinsing every little bit of good stuff out with.
Yeah, so with a smaller system, there's a couple of things that happen. The program scales up the small batch for the materials to get in the instance of 90 to 70 odd, that's an extra 25%. So it scales up the materials by 25%. The other thing that a small system will do is it will give you a higher IBU level simply because it's smaller. That's what I've come to. So there's a couple of things that you get. But when I plugged the same data into Brewfather, and I would suspect it would be very similar with Beersmith, although I don't have Beersmith, it comes out, and I managed to get my manual way of doing it to absolutely align with what the program was producing. So I was pretty happy about that, really, because otherwise I wouldn't be having this chat with you now. I'd still be wondering why it was doing things. So whilst there's a bit of detail there, what I hope I've documented is if somebody wanted to recreate a Partygyle from a brewing log that they have in the future, they've got enough data there to be able to have a crack at it and produce a single guile. I've done 448 batches, and I've done 5 Partygyles. And that was mostly because I needed to brew some of them for the Guile Brews book. I don't use my 3-vessel system anymore. It's all in bits. I don't have the wherewithal anymore, and I don't drink as much, so I don't need gallons and litres of beer. After I got this about right, I brewed the beer that came out of the recipe. So I brewed ordinary bitter, or yob, as I have christened it. Young's Ordinary Bitter, yob, which is boy backwards. So this is a 1036 beer, aiming for about 1008, so 3.7-ish ABV, 22-ish IBU, and about 13 EBC, and most of the EBC is coming from caramel and the number 3 invert. So the overall recipe, quite simple, which is in the video. So it was Maris Otter, 85%, torrefied barley. Now, I couldn't get torrefied barley, so I used rolled barley, or flake barley as it's sometimes called. In Australia, crisp is not imported anymore, and crisp seem to be the makers of torrefied. I'm told that the torrefied barley has a less grainy flavour than rolled barley. So if there's people in the UK that brew the beer, might be able to do a taste comparison. So it was 9% barley, 3.5% number 3 invert sugar. They used a bit of malt extract. That might have been diastatic. Don't know. I just added it basically to the base malt. And 0.5 grams per litre of caramel, Parisian essence, which provided the bulk of the colour. 22 IBUs, Goldings and Fuggles, and did a hop stand of 30 minutes at 90C to see how it all worked. And I used a repitch of the relatively new Lallemand House ale yeast, mostly because it was nice and lively, and I just gave it a wash and put it in the next batch. It's quite a good attenuator. It flocks out really well. So it gets to where it needs to be, which is 1009-ish, and then you see the wort in, because I've got a Kegland Firmzilla all-rounder, plastic pet, so you can see in the side, and it just drops. So you've got almost bright wort on about day 5. So it's done in 48 hours, and I just let it clean up for a week. No dry hopping, and the other advantage with a little bit of spunding, you can have your real ale straight from the fermenter as quality control checks.
So if you're using a Spunding valve, it sounds like you're brewing a bit under pressure.
Oh.
I didn't think
I'm not brewing
I almost didn't turn on the soundboard. I was like, I'm not going to use the soundboard with Peter, but there you go.
No. It's
Welcome to the morning zoo.
It was not brewed under pressure. It was conditioned.
Okay.
So when it gets about 2 points above where it's going to be, so about 10, 11, 10, 10, 10, I'll put the spunding valve on, and that's just because this is a real ale, less than 2% CO2 volumes, probably about 1.5. It's a little bit imprecise, but I'm probably at nearer 2 than anything else, and that actually draws the beer up through the tube. You can pull a nice pint. It's a bit yeasty usually, the first couple. Then I put it in the keg, bit of biofine clear, and bright as a pin. I've consumed half the keg in a couple of weeks. Homebrew Club meeting coming up shortly. Going to take it along, and that might do for it, I suspect. It's a very flavoursome beer. I do like Goldings and Fuggles as a hop mix. It's just got those classic English bitter flavours, earthy, bit of citrus. It's also a very dry beer. Not mouth-puckeringly dry, because it's got that rolled barley in it. It's nice and it's well attenuated. So, and it's got a good hop profile. And you can't beat Marisota as a base malt. It just gives you that characterful maltiness. So I'm very impressed with how it's turned out. It's just a shame that my memory of 50 years ago can't do any sort of taste comparison. So never mind.
Well, it sounds delicious.
It's a shame you can't share it with me.
Yeah, no kidding. Shipping rates are not that bad between here and there, right? Oh.
I don't know which day is it. What tariff applying?
Now. Now, the real test is for you to get out on the rugby. Is it pitch or field, or what's the term for the rugby place?
Pitch. I'd be almost up. Well, I would be at Golden Oldie standard, and
just run around for a little bit and then have a pint, and I bet it'll bring back all kinds of memories.
Yes. I sadly. My rugby playing days are well over. I did enjoy the whole rugby experience. It was very different when I came to Australia. I wondered why we were having the equivalent of Gatorade at half time. In the UK, playing rugby in the winter, it's wet, occasional sleet, snow. Only very occasionally do you have a dry day. Here, when I played in the suburban rugby competition in the fourth grade, God, sweat buckets because you're playing in the middle of the day. So the grades in the morning start in the morning with the lower grades and gradually work through to about mid-afternoon for the first grade. So if you were in the lower grades, you're in the heat of the day. We're talking 25 degrees plus, and you're running around on concrete hard ground. Didn't have the same enjoyment level.
Different strokes for different folks. Maybe literally at my age to get out there. Well,
it's much better watching it now.
Well, if you want to find some recipes to play with on this thing, I bet you can go to Lulu Books, right? And get a copy of on demand of your Guile Brews book. If you want to see the video of that Peter made of this process and get more details, if you're smarter than me and you know how computers work, you can go to youtube.com and look for the Tritun Books YouTube channel, Tritun, and Peter he goes into a lot more details on how to actually do the technical part, but I think it's fascinating. I think that, you do say that you had some challenges with AI and kind of training it to do what you wanted it to do or make sure that it did what you wanted it to do. But it seems like in the end, you came out with a good result.
I might have got there eventually, but I would have had to learn Python programming, and that wasn't my primary goal. My primary goal was to have a program that did the donkey work for me, the analysis. And I couldn't have done it without the AI. But these large language models, it's all about how you question the model. And one of my learnings, which I'll just leave you with, you can ask it the question and then ask it also to tell you how to improve that question so that it can deal with it better. I know it's a little bit circular. That plus some iterative approach, because as you go along, you realize, it's interpreted what I said there this way, which wasn't what I meant. So it's all about how well you articulate the requirements. If you get the requirements right, and this circular way of doing it at the beginning seemed to improve matters. I didn't waste an inordinate amount of time, more than normal, and I'm only on the free one, the pro one, which it does a couple of things, and it goes, you have to wait for a couple of hours, which actually isn't a problem, because if you've done your thinking beforehand, you've got a nice question to go. It gives you a program, and then you go off and you've got a couple of hours to run the thing through the program and go, I need to change this requirement, or, didn't realize that. So it knows stuff all about brewing. You just got to remember that
No,
it's an it. It knows a lot about programming, and that's good.
Yeah, man's got to know his limitations. As I think,
a bot's got to do what a bot's got to do.
Oh, well, this has been fun.
Thanks, James. See you next time.
Thanks again to Peter. You can check out his YouTube video with more details on this process on his Tritun Books channel on YouTube. That's Tritun, as in, three tons. And you can find his books at lulu.com, Lulu.com. Always fun to catch up with Peter. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. You can get your brewer's logbook now if you said that you wanted to buy one. They're going out the door and going across the country and around the world. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.